Welcome, welcome. I'm Marcy Billen. I'm a real estate agent here in the Oklahoma City Metro, and this is our weekly show. And I am your guide for all things real estate adjacent here in Oklahoma. So, before we get started, be sure to hit that like button, please, just so other people might see this and to show me some love. I really appreciate that. And oh my goodness, my nose itches. I also have a link in the description where you can join our newsletter. So I send out 2 newsletters per month, and I really, really like writing. So I love writing newsletters. I love writing the content for my YouTube channel, but also for the newsletters and for the live streams. So all the things. And I would love for you to join that newsletter to get all of the things that we put in that, like new listings and different videos and events that are happening around the metro and home maintenance tips, etc., etc. So, as you guessed, I am a real estate agent here in the Oklahoma City Metro because I said it before. And today, you just have me. I do not have a guest on, and we are going to cover a few different topics. The main one being summer in Oklahoma and what that's like for us here, because the different seasons definitely have different things going for them. So, one thing I'm doing if you're watching this is I have like this earbud in. So, I'm learning all about mics recently, like microphones. So, I know some of my videos and other things like sometimes the sound isn't the best quality, and I know it can get better, and it's just not something that I focused on in the past because, like, I don't know, there's a lot of things to focus on. I do this, but I also sell real estate, etc. And so, yeah, am learning so I can hear myself in here and how good it sounds, which doesn't sound bad. And also know that the neighbor has been mowing his lawn for like 2 hours. I'm not really sure how it's taking him that long, and it may be someone else at this point. But the guy across the street, I don't know his name, I think Handsome does. He was mowing he was mowing his lawn in these shorts, and then he had, like, rubber boots, like, rolled down. I don't know what was going on. I was like, "That's so fascinating." Maybe he just didn't have any other closed-toed shoes, whatever. So, summer in Oklahoma, if you have a lawn, which most people do, a lot of Oklahomans are pretty obsessed with lawn care. Not everybody, but I have, Handsome, my husband, we work together. We have quite a few friends that are pretty obsessed with lawn care. I don't know too much about the different grasses. Um, some neighborhoods, people will want the lawn looking pretty perfect. So please note that. How often we have to mow our lawns? Typically, like right now, it's about every 10 days. When it gets really hot and it's raining a lot, then the lawn grows a lot faster. Rain has a lot to do with this. So sometimes in June, a lot of times in June, it'll like rain and be warm. So then the lawn grows really fast. And so you kind of have to mow sometimes every week, which is unfortunate. So, like every 7 days. And then once it stops raining, which it usually does in the late summer, like after July 4th, it will stop raining. And if it does for a long time and you don't water your lawn or your flowers and all that other stuff, then everything will turn brown. Literally everything will turn brown and it's gross looking. But as long as we're not on a water ban, people typically do water their lawns. So know that. And then we usually have to mow until about October. So, yeah. So I don't have an alcoholic beverage tonight. I have my water in my Simply Modern cup. If you guys didn't know, Simply Modern, and they're not sponsoring the show at all, but they're an Oklahoma company, and I like them more than Stanley cups because I don't know, I think they look prettier. So I am on my 4th Simply Modern cup. Sometimes in the winter I use my small one, but I like this big one because it has a handle. The small one does not. See, I'm like learning about my mic and like what makes a sound and what doesn't. Anyway, I am feeling a little funky today. So not like sick, but like think we're gonna have some fun. It's gonna be good. I have some comedy lined up for us and weather and then events and some other things. So first thing, we're gonna toggle, I feel like, back and forth between like storms, weather, and then the summertime because it's all like interconnected. So we did have storms last night, and a lot of you have reached out to me and like asked if we were okay, if everything was going fine, if we had any storm damage. And I really appreciate everyone who did reach out. I always appreciate that. So the answer to the question is, we it felt funky yesterday. Like if you're an Oklahoman, if you're even a Texan or Kansas person, you can feel when the weather is a little bit weird. It gets strange, right? Yeah. And if you guys have questions for me about like the storms or um anything or have a comment, please drop your comments. I love the interaction and talking to you guys here in this situation. It's a lot of fun. So, okay, where was I? Oh, we were talking about the storms. So yeah, the storms yesterday, they issued like this alert that the storms were going to be really bad, which is interesting. They don't always do that. I will tell you that since the 2013 tornado that hit more, especially on 19th Street, that weather like we didn't used to have so much sorry, I'm having we didn't have so many like warnings about it. People weren't as freaked out about it. And I understand why they are now. I mean, so I didn't realize that there were some children who died in Plaza Towers, which Plaza Towers is an elementary school in Moore. It's a neighborhood as well. That school was completely decimated during that tornado, and some children died, and they would have graduated high school this year, which is extremely sad. That was like kind of a gut punch, right? Whenever me and Handsome were talking about that. Handsome was also in that tornado. He was in the hospital and the hospital got destroyed. He was like in the basement in the lab whenever that happened. So we kind of expected something last night. I believe, was it last week or the week before that we had like the 27 tornadoes? I have no idea. It was on a Monday as well. So by 3 o'clock, everything had kind of shut down. And that's pretty normal for us at this point. Like, oh, okay, there's going to be storms rolling in. So, we're going to we're going to shut things down because there's just no reason, especially after COVID. And I think that might have been a big reason that things changed is like, oh, we can all do our work from home. We can all do that besides first responders, etc. So things shut down. I was at home sitting on my couch. We would like turn on a show if we were watching a show, but we would also turn on the news if we were doing that. We do have 3, I guess 4 maybe weather channels. I watch 3 of them. I don't know all of their names. David Payne and Mike Morgan are who I typically watch. I prefer Mike Morgan because he is very chill. He does not get worked up. And David Payne does. And I have some comedy for you here in just a bit. But basically, we saw that the storms were going to be north of us, typically they were north of I-40. And so we went to bed. And so whenever I sleep, I watch a show and then I go to bed. And the way I watch a show is I have my phone. Handsome thinks it's insane. But I have my phone on this like holder, right? And I hold it like that. And it's great. And so during my little commercials on my show, I would look at my weather app, which I use the Forewarn app, like for the number 4. And I pull it up and I look at the radar. That's what I'm concerned about. I want to see how the storms are moving. And I opened up the app at like, I don't know, 10:45. And I'm like, oh, there's a storm. So whenever we went to bed, there weren't any. And so I was like, well, crap. Because I usually like turn over and go to sleep after that point. But there was a storm. So I was like, well, okay, I'm going to stay up and I'm going to keep watching this. And I could hear the wind howling outside. It was blowing pretty hard. And it kept like blowing kind of hard. And it was moving closer to the storm. So I got up. I was hungry at this point because like dinner was like 4 hours ago. and I went ahead and turned on the TV and comforted my cats because they were like, "Mom, what are you doing out of bed? This is unacceptable to us." And I turned on the TV quietly to try to not wake Handsome up because he was sleeping by this point, and took a look at the news. And they were like, "Oh, yeah, something could happen," but mostly they were talking about Choctaw, which, if you don't know, Choctaw is east of Oklahoma City. I live in Norman, which is south of Oklahoma City. So, we know that if something is art has a storm has already moved east of us, then it's not coming the other direction. So it's not gonna go south, it's gonna continue moving northeast, and so I didn't really worry about it, so I watched the news for a little bit, ate my food, which was pad thai and delicious, and went back to bed. So, that's how the storms went for me last night. People up in the north had a little bit harder time. So the town that got hit, and I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can see it, is called Barnstall. Hanson didn't know how to spell it or pronounce it. So I helped him with that. We have a lot of interesting ways of pronouncing our towns sometimes. Oh dear, it's very large. Okay. So this is from the Oklahoman. So the Tulsa World is who covers Tulsa. It's the newspaper, and I don't have a subscription to the Tulsa World, though I probably could get in my dad's, which I should totally do that because it is interesting to read things from different perspectives, right? Let me get I can't even see this. I have a big screen, and that's how I show everything to you guys. So, and this one looks all weird. There we go. Okay. So the town of Barnsdall, which I don't believe is very big. I don't know that I've ever been there. It's up by Bartlesville, which is like an hour north of Tulsa, I believe. I think I've been to Bartlesville twice in my life. But this poor town has gotten hit twice in like a little over a month. And someone did lose their life yesterday. So this woman that they interviewed, she's here. She said that her cellar door flew open and water started filling up the cellar. And then another man talks about going into his closet and riding out the storm there. I get a lot of questions about that, about where to ride out a storm and if you have, a storm shelter, etc. And me and my husband do not have a storm shelter. And I don't know that our neighbors do, but they don't use it. They don't use it because our garages are small, so they have to, pull their car out, and they don't wanna do that. So, yeah. Uh, Hold on, I got a comment. Crazy, the doors were locked. Yeah, no, those winds are really strong. Like, last night, the wind was blowing at 80 miles per hour, and I was like, "Oh, it's not that bad." So that's kind of horrifying. But this woman, this town, Barnstall, was in a EF3 tornado, which is pretty strong. So this guy had um his roof ripped off his house. He went into the closet, and that's where we go as well. We go into an interior room because if you can see too, maybe not in that one, like, how a tornado rips things up is the exterior first, of course, because it's coming from the outside. This one's just really torn up. But the exterior first, it definitely comes from the outside. So, if you go into an interior room, the likelihood is small, like, you can still get carried away, but a lot of these storms aren't that strong to do that. Is it safer in a tornado shelter? Yes, of course it is. Um, I don't know what it is about going into a shelter. I'm not always for it. I have not very many times in my life gone into a shelter. Even growing up, we had one poured into our house, like into the foundation, and I've never taken shelter there before. And then I went to a Walmart once to take shelter. That was for the May 2013 tornado, which we didn't need to do that. And then I've taken shelter at the OU dorms before. So I think that's it. Sometimes we have something against it. But this is what happened last night in Barnstall. I know there were a total of, they're saying 5 tornadoes in Oklahoma last night, which is a terrible night, but not the worst that we've ever had, for sure. So this guy is saying that the tornado shredded his house with debris thrown across the yard and in the trees. Trees were either bent or knocked over, and power lines were knocked down all over the property. So a lot of times the things that happen after the tornado hits are actually worse than um, the tornado itself. Like, you can get electrocuted, you can drown. All of these things that happen are really serious. So we do watch out for that. Okay. I'm gonna jump into some comedy. Are you guys ready? So I mentioned, oh, I can't see myself anymore. I'm gonna make myself a little bigger here so you can see. Okay, so I mentioned David Payne and Mike Morgan. I'm so sorry to the other guy that I cannot remember his name, but he probably doesn't need me to be famous, right? So I every time every time David Payne covers a storm, people like update these lists of like funny sayings that he says. And this is why our meteorologists here in Oklahoma have such a reputation. So we're gonna talk about some of these. Brian, hello, sir. Good to talk with you. So it's a tornado watch. So when the sirens, this is a comment from a friend of mine who's also a client. So he says, so it's a tornado watch. So when the sirens go off, that means you go outside and watch, right? Yes, typically, because the sirens go off all over town, and the likelihood, because if you're watching the news and it's like 2 miles away, the likelihood of you being swept away while you're watching it is low. So you absolutely 100% go outside because it's really cool to watch the clouds. Yes, absolutely. It was really weird whenever I went outside last night, I grabbed something off my porch because I had it. It was like this wire thing that my mom had given me recently, and I didn't want it to be blown off of my front porch. So I grabbed it and it was totally still out. And then like 10 minutes later, the winds were blowing at 80 miles per hour. Or it wasn't 80. I don't think it got to that here, but it, sounded like that from my bed, I guess, as I was watching my show. All right. Thanks so much, Yolanda. Ugh, I hope you survived as well as Woo! Cool. Comedy. Here we go. I was looking forward to this the most with you guys. So I hope you can read this. I'm going to make this bigger if I can. Oops. No, I don't want to print it. Goodness gracious. There we go. So this is Reddit, and this is compiled from Facebook. And I was laughing really hard as I read these earlier. And, when it's that kind of week, you just want to laugh a little bit. So this is why David Payne is so popular here in Oklahoma. So this quote, which was last year, so they updated some of these, but I think this is pretty great. So he said, as he took off his glasses, David Payne takes off his glasses and said, "People, if you are in a tent, for God's sakes, take cover." I guess I don't know what he was watching, that people were in a tent, but you have to really get the meat of what he's doing. You have to like watch him say this stuff. This one was pretty iconic last year. He said, "If grandma's at the casino, you need to go get her. You have time." And that is the great thing, right, about our weather system in Oklahoma, is that we do have time. They give us a lot of time to take cover at all these, it's not 2 minutes notice, it's 20 to 30 minutes notice. That's why he's saying, "If grandma's at the casino, you need to go get her, you have time." That is incredibly important for us here in Oklahoma, and really, Oklahoma, specifically Gary England, who was the meteorologist before David Payne took over. It's my understanding that David Payne was a storm chaser before he took over for Gary England. Gary England, I never watched him because I didn't grow up here in Oklahoma City. I grew up, of course, in, the Tulsa area, so I never watched Gary England. I mean, I'm sure he was on sometimes, like, they showed him because he's kind of known as, like, the father of meteorology, and he talked people into, buying these radars that would help us stay safe. He was in a really big tornado whenever he was a kid, so that's what inspired him to become a meteorologist himself. The rumor, well, I read this in a book, is that Gary England did not like David Payne because he believes that David Payne really dramatizes things and scares people. And that if you read this Reddit thread, you'll see that through the Reddit thread that like people also think that, which is one reason why I a lot of times will switch over to Mike Morgan. But David Payne is a really good comedian. That's why we're looking at his stuff right now. All right. People do have drinking games around David Payne. So like saying like it's ramping up. He says that a lot if you watch him. Oh, it's ramping up. It's ramping up. So that's you can take a shot of whatever you desire if you see that. This was I don't know when this one was. Oklahoma check-in. David Payne just said, and I quote, "Nothing worse than getting double hammered," which is what he's saying when like the tornado's like on top of someone. He calls it getting hammered. So they were probably being hammered by like hail and rain and wind. Yeah, this is the whole thing. Like watching him is hysterical, especially if the tornado is not near you. It's so hysterical. I agree, Yolanda. The next one, go to your safe space. Jesus would have been there 10 minutes ago. So this is him being inspiring, but also funny. Like I do believe he wants people to be safe, but he also does get very excited by weather because he's a scientist and meteorologist. Like this is what he does. This one I remember it was last year. He got pretty distracted. He said, "It's a great mall, outdoor restaurants." Anyway, back to the tornado. That kind of encapsulates sometimes how we feel about the weather itself. And I know I had a couple more in here. Here's another one. There's debris falling. This was last year. There's debris falling, probably silverware. I don't want the wind, but I am low on spoons, y'all. So I think he gets a little punchy because I know yesterday he was covering the storms for like 7 hours because they knew it was going to be bad. Another one, new weather term, octopus mesocyclone. They do like to talk about the mesocyclones. So that one apparently had like 8 tentacles. This one, tiger safari at 8:45, not the one you're thinking of. Yeah, yeah. Tiger safari made Oklahoma pretty famous during 2020, and I barely remember watching that, but I know I did. If you live in a trailer, go to a neighbor's house and take cover, even if you don't like them. And I mean, this is where Oklahomans really kind of sparkle is there's not liking people and then there's life and death. So I was talking to a friend earlier today, and so she lives on this kind of small street, and recently someone bought the house that has a tornado shelter in the neighborhood. It has one in the front yard. And apparently it's kind of like everyone's tornado shelter because everyone kind of wants to take care of each other. Like you don't want to see your neighbor get hurt or possibly killed just because like they didn't have a shelter. So there's community ones. And growing up, actually, so I went to this school called Justice Tiowa. Justice was one school, Tiowa was another, but they merged. And at Tiowa, there was a community shelter for the entire community. I'm not sure how big that community was at that point. So it was in the playground. So whenever we did a tornado drill, which was pretty often, they would put us in there, and we could only the students, it was 3 grades, so, like, 6 different classes. We could only take up half of the tornado shelter because the community would take up the rest if that were to happen. And the fire department was, of course, a volunteer and across the street. Uh, we could barely stand up in that tornado shelter, but it was really big. I'm trying to think of even how big it would have been. Probably at least, like, I would say 600 square feet, something like that. Like, it was large and definitely for the whole neighborhood. Val is like another like a storm chaser. So David Payne is always saying, "Where's Val? Where's Val?" And I don't watch the news enough to really know who these people are. So, yeah, he says that a lot. This was last year. I like donuts, but not with problems. Oh, I need to join this Facebook group. Apparently, this group is called Small Moments in Oklahoma. I'm in a lot of Facebook groups purely for the comedy, or really interesting stuff. So join the Facebook groups. They're hysterical. So this one says, if I live in coal, I'm in the hole. He was, trying to inspire people and being funny at the same time. Yes, this is a comment. She says, it stormed last night, but I never heard sirens. No sirens went off because we didn't have any rotation. So they're not storm sirens, they're tornado sirens. So they won't go off if there's no rotation on the storm. So that is why we didn't hear it. I was listening for it and I was like, dang, do I need to open a window? Because sometimes I sleep through it. But I didn't. It was hot. So yeah, they won't go off if the sirens or if the tornado's not happening. Oh, my cat's in here. Next. Oh, this one was my favorite. This is the last one, you guys. Another tornado season quote from David Payne that will live rent-free in my head forever now. Amber, you're about to get it. Amber, you are going to get hammered tonight. Amber, you're getting hammered. I didn't know until that moment there was even a town called Amber in Oklahoma. And there is a town called Amber. And I think that was last year. There was one from last night. Yeah, this one was funny. So he's talking to one of his storm trackers, storm chaser. David says, tornado is hitting Riverwind Casino right now, which is in South Norman. We have a tracker sitting there now. Let's hear from him. The tracker says, David, I'm sitting in the Riverwind parking lot and it's not even windy. I'm not seeing any power flashes or debris. Yeah. And I guess last week he said grandma's making pancakes because the clouds look like pancakes. So everyone's been talking about that recently too. Yes. Yep. It is great that this is from a comment that they only have the sirens go off whenever there's a tornado. So we don't need to take cover otherwise. I didn't take cover at all. I didn't even get ready to. Gosh. When we saw the storms going north, that was kind of, what we decided to do. So fantastic. All right, guys. Next up, I think that's about all the David Payne humor we can take for today. The temperature for Oklahoma in the summer. So Oklahoma gets incredibly hot in the summer. To me, I think it's hot. And understand that where else I've lived, so I've lived in the Middle East, and I lived in Bahrain, which is next to Saudi, and so it was 120 degrees typically in their summer, which lasts 6 months, and then like 80, 75, 80 degrees in the winter, maybe cooler, which also lasts 6 months. So they kind of have 2 seasons. It does not get to 120 degrees here, and it's also not the desert, which is where Bahrain is, right? So that is really what I compare things to. Please understand that everyone, not everyone, most people, the vast majority of humans have air conditioning. because, you know, it is so hot. Like, it's dangerous hot. And one thing that makes it so dangerous is that everyone has air conditioning, right? So we can't um we get used to it. So then we can't handle the hot anymore, right? So that is a huge deal because I think like growing up, my grandparents had air conditioning but didn't use it. Oh my goodness, my nose hurts today. So they didn't get as hurt by the hot, but you know, it's definitely a really big deal. So if you come here to purchase a house, everywhere, like all the houses are going to have air conditioning unless like it has just been gutted and it's really bad. All the houses have central air conditioning. There are maybe some houses left, not in the metro necessarily, but out in other areas that have window units. Some people use window units to help their main unit out. Some people have mini splits upstairs, etc. I think mini splits are a really good idea. Um, if you have a room that needs the help. And if you don't know what a mini split is, go Google it. That's what the Googles are for, right? So yes, everywhere has air conditioning. I get this question a lot because I help people move from Northern California and Washington State and Oregon and you know, the Northeast. Like a lot of those places, they don't have air conditioning, which is awesome for them. But here, it gets really hot. So what does that hot look like? Well, it's really humid typically, but it's not Austin humid and it's definitely not Houston humid. So I was in Austin last week and I always put my hair up. I mean, I guess I could like get humidity cream or something, but I don't. I hate putting product in my hair. So it's always humid here. I usually never have my hair down in the summer. This is just really hot. Excuse me. And it also does tend to be a bit windy. So the wind in Oklahoma rises with the sun because when it heats up the air, then it starts moving and that's the wind. So that's how it works. It sometimes the wind feels like you're getting hit with a hot blow dryer in the summertime. So we adjust as humans who live here. We don't plan things between the hours of 1 and 5 because it is too hot. It's not necessarily that much cooler before 1 o'clock, but it's more bearable and the sun isn't as harsh. Getting up early is not uncommon. Getting up early before like the sun can really reach a peak because it'll be a slight bit cooler. The thing about here too is that I know in Southern California and a lot of other places like out in the desert in Arizona, when the sun goes down, it cools off. It doesn't really happen here. It does cool off. It's not going to be 100 degrees all day and then 100 degrees at night. But like last summer, it was like 100 degrees during the day and then 92 degrees at night, which isn't a great difference. It's just the sun isn't out because it's dark outside. So please know that we do not have that fluctuation because of our humidity and I guess where our altitude is, or not altitude, latitude is for Oklahoma. So it does get toasty. Last summer we had a heat dome, which felt so different. I spent most of my summers aside from I spent summers in Southeast Asia, I guess, which is they don't have air conditioning there. And then Bahrain, which everyone has air conditioning. And then I've spent a summer in Southern California. But last year we had a heat dome and it felt super different. So usually it's hot, but you can at least breathe. During our heat dome, which was this thing that happened, and I don't know all of the science behind it, it was so oppressive. You felt like there was a bubble of sheer heat around you. And listen, guys, I love the sauna. Like I go usually once a week to sit in the sauna and I love it. And this was like a sauna all the time. It was nearly unbearable. So hopefully that won't happen this summer, but it did happen for quite some time last summer. I think it was weeks. I felt terrible. Ugh. Ugh. When does it start getting cooler? Labor Day weekend. Memorial Day weekend is when it starts getting hot. 4th of July is pretty hot. August is the worst. And then Labor Day weekend, it may start cooling off or it may not. It doesn't have to. Yep. It could be hot until October, or it could snow in October. That's fine too. That happens. It's happened before. So, yeah. Sometimes the kids are wearing jackets as they are trick-or-treating, and sometimes they're in shorts. So that just depends on how Oklahoma is feeling that day. And I love the Oklahoma storms in the summer, and, like, last week when I was in Austin, it reminded me of there's this book that I like. Oh, guys, I'm gonna grab it for you. Can I even find it? Yep. Okay. This is my favorite book of all time. It's called Buffalo Gal, and I think it's out of print, so if you need to buy it, then just know that. But it's about Oklahoma and Texas. So it's by an Oklahoma author. His name's Bill Wallace, and he died a few years ago because I looked it up. He wrote Red Dog, but he also wrote Beauty. Beauty is a very sad book, so don't traumatize your children with that one quite yet, but do read Buffalo Gal. It is so good. I had my dad read it to me so many times, and my cover actually fell off of it, and I had to tape it back on because I've had the same copy since I was like 8 years old. So in it, they have this scene where there's a thunderstorm and they are out in Texas in the hill country, so around Austin. So they like the woman that's in the story, she's like 15, and they go to Oklahoma, Pahuska, which is up north in Osage County, and then they drive down to they get on a train and then ride their horses to get this herd of buffalo to save them from like hunters and poachers who are not supposed to be killing them. And so as they're searching for these buffalo, they come across a storm, and it's a big Texas thunderstorm. And they count the I don't know if you guys know to do this, but you count seconds between lightning and thunder to see how far away the storm is because they didn't have meteorologists. And so they had to ride their horses like 2 miles across this huge, open field to get to the shack so that they don't get basically killed by the storm. Um, there is hail that happens at one point as they're like going across this. It's crazy, but I love that book. But I was in a Texas thunderstorm last week that was like that. And I remember so many thunderstorms growing up in the summertime. And I'm not sure if they're like not happening or if like in my head they happened way more than they were actually happening, where it was like huge thunders, like booming, crazy thunders that would shake the walls. So I don't know if it's different or if I was just a kid, but I love the thunderstorms, like watching them, watching that lightning go. It is so cool. Like it is so cool. I love that. The tornadoes not so much, but they are different types of storms. The thunderstorm versus a tornado, which is like they call it like a squall line. Oh, my cat is here to greet you guys. She is very upset that I'm talking to you and not to her. So if you guys have any more questions about the summer, please let me know. I had, okay, a couple of things here to go over with you. Nope. Where to find events. So summer in Oklahoma does get pretty that's when everything kind of happens. Winter, you never know what's going to happen. Like you could have an amazing Christmas time or amazing January. But in the summer, like you pretty much know like it's gonna be hot and the sun's gonna be out most likely. So that's when things are planned. So yeah, it's not too bad. So the one of the main places I look, and I'm gonna put this up on the screen for you. Oh, I have it here. Is on Facebook. Oh, my cat is here. I think she wants to greet everyone. So I'm gonna try to get her off. There we go. Get her off of here because she does cry a lot. So this is where I find most of the events that we end up going to is going to be on Facebook. This is a new Filipino restaurant that I want to try, and I saw it and I wanted to take one of my friends to it as well cuz she grew up on Filipino food. So, yes, sounds like Illinois. Absolutely. Hot summers. I've been in Illinois in the summer. It's super hot. And yes, my cats are adorable. I wish BB would come over here, but she won't. Oh, man. So, this is how I mostly look for my events. It's gonna be on Facebook. And I just kinda go through and find what sounds interesting to me. So, um, one of the bigger events that's happening is going to be Blanchard May Days, and it's on the 17th, I believe, or that weekend of the 17th. So I have all of these events, like some of these obviously are not local events. We have outdoor movie in the park that's going to be in Norman. You can also find these in the newspaper, but they have a really good presence on Facebook. So that's where I typically find them. And then we do have a soul food festival coming up. I totally forgot about that. I think I did say I was interested in going to that. We have a lot of food festivals and, like, different festivals celebrating different countries, so it's always fun. Art Walk in Norman comes up every second Friday of every month. Terra Verde is having a plant sale, so that's good. You guys look at Facebook for these because Facebook has kind of become the internet in that way, and if you wanna find something fun to do, then that is how you do it. I also put stuff like this a lot of times in my, newsletters, so know that too. Westwood Park is opening, so that is a fun summer activity for adults and children alike. I do believe they do adult nights still at Westwood Park. So Westwood Park, let me show you. I'm learning this mic. It is super interesting. Yep, here it is. So it is I've never been. Crowds aren't my thing, so that's why I haven't been. I should probably go on, like, an adult night or something, but, I just don't. So, it's called the Westwood Family Aquatics Center. This is what it looks like on the inside. Looks fun, I guess. It's just not my thing, but they have swim times, of course, that go on, so you can see general admission, holiday, etc. They have lap swimming, they have water walking, water fitness. They also do this at the Y. I tend to swim at the Y, which is where that's where I work out. But it's an indoor pool, not an outdoor pool. They have their season passes, so a lot of kids end up spending the entire summer basically at this water aquatic center. You can rent the full facility. Some of the people that I know do this for their clients, etc. So that is one thing that goes on here in Norman. It can be fun. We've been invited. I've just never gone. So that's that's what I do. Oh man. Cool. I have this set, so it's pretty like this is Norman. So if you move here or if you are here, like Facebook knows where you are. It's a geotagging system. So if you want to find something to do, this is how you do it. And I know that you can search for things in the events as well, and they have all of these different categories. Let me see if there was anything else in Norman. Rotary is a group. Handsome used to be in that, and I know that it's an international group, of course, and it's something that you can meet a lot of really cool people. We definitely met a lot of really cool people whenever Handsome was in Rotary, and are still friends with a lot of those people. So that's pretty fun. Okay, yep, there's a lot of different things going on. So that is where I'd find that if I were you. That makes the most sense, right? I'm looking at my notes here to make sure. Okay, I have one more thing I wanted to cover with you guys. And it's a little bit of real estate, and it's in the journal. So the journal record is my favorite news source. If you guys don't read it, I don't know why you're not reading it. I mean, you do have to pay for it. So much better than anything else. It is literally so much better. So this is Gen Z feels the bite of housing cost. So I think sometimes a lot of people think that millennials are Gen Z, but guys, I'm a millennial and I'm 35. I'm going to be 36 here real soon. So we're working like millennials work. We have families and we have houses a lot of times at this point. Like we work. We're not in school anymore. So if this is me on a soapbox, if you're making those comments that, oh, millennials don't do anything, yeah, no, we do. We definitely do. So Gen Z is what I'm talking about now. And I know some Gen Zers, they call them Zoomers, I guess, which is hysterical. I sometimes don't even know what they're talking about. But I think they're amazing and smart, and I am excited to see the world that they bring to light for us. So this is an article that's telling that kind of outlining the issues with Gen Z and the problems that they're going to have in purchasing houses. So the Gen Zers that I work with right now are typically born between 1997 and 2001, which is insane. I love oh, thank you. Oh, I love millennials too. This is from one of our viewers. She said that she loves millennials, and I think we're awesome. And um, very different than other generations, but also we're a huge generation, just like the boomers. So we're gonna take over the world. I love that. Okay. They're saying that Gen Z is going to be the highest earners, which I'm like, okay, so this is where reading the news is so interesting because I don't saying that Gen Zers are the highest earners is like, okay, but what are you taking into account here? Yes, they're earning more money. Millennials are earning more money than Gen Xers and boomers, blah, blah, blah. But also, like, life is more expensive and inflation happens, a natural inflation. So I'm not really sure that I like agree with that sentiment that they're putting out here, like that Gen Zers are going to make the most money, because I also do believe that they may have more working against them in a lot of respects. Like, for instance, like, even the cost of my college education is so much different than their cost of their college education, etcetera. So this is where it's interesting. It's interesting. Um, okay. What I really liked here in this article was it outlined how much rent Gen Zers are going to spend in Oklahoma City, which we're in the Oklahoma City metro, right? Before they turn 30. So this says, according to Rent Cafe, which is a data site for rentals, Oklahoma City Gen Zers will spend $105,000 on rent before turning 30, $6,000 higher than what millennials spent at the same age. $6,000 in this economy is $6,000 a lot. Yes, $6,000 is a lot of money, but it also, like, it's such a different amount than what it was 20 years ago. So, $105,000 on rent. And, it goes on to say, like, this person says that her first rental was $370 a month, and, she was born in '86, so I was born in '88, so she's 2 years older than me. My when I first lived in a house when I first moved in, we paid it was 5 of us in one house, so we each paid $200 a month. It was cheap, and then after that, I think I paid 300 in an apartment, I shared with somebody, but it was really a $600 a month apartment, and I was kind of a weirdo. I liked to save money. So, Gen Zers will spend $105,000 on rent, and this is where I think it just comes down to, like, will they be able to buy the same houses that millennials did? Maybe not. Will they be able to live the same quality not quality, the same level of life, I guess? It all depends on our priorities, right? So this is where it comes into like, what's the priority of a millennial? What's the priority of a Gen Xer? Like we all have different things that we're typically after. Everyone kind of knows that millennials are more after the experiences versus like material items. That's a really common thing. For us and Gen Zers, I'm honestly not sure. I probably need to dig into that a little bit more to see what's the most important thing to them. Um, it's just weighing those options of buying versus renting. And what I don't want is for people to not understand the process, and that's the only reason why they decide to rent versus buying. I I do think digging into that research and getting clarification on which will serve you best is the most important part of that conversation. Honestly, no matter if you're a Gen Zer, a millennial, a Gen Xer, or a boomer. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. That's my real estate thing for today. Thank you so much for joining. Please leave a comment, and I will see you next week.